I'm really excited to welcome you all. My name is Amber Johnson, and I'm the Corporate Relations Advisor for the Center. And today I just want to welcome you, take you through a couple of housekeeping issues, and make sure everybody's feeling comfortable before we launch right into the open house. So let me tell you a little bit about the software we're in, and as a participant, what you can expect. Right now, you are all muted, and for the attendees, you will be muted throughout this event, so you don't have to worry about the dog barking in the background or a colleague stopping by your office. We won't be able to hear any of that going on in the background. But we do want you to communicate with us, and the best way to do that is by using the questions box that's part of the GoToWebinar webinar software. You should be able to find it in that panel that's probably on the right side of your screen. And you can just click into that box, type a question or type a comment, and I'll be able to see those. I'll be the only one able to see those. And then I'll be able to moderate those and share the questions with the rest of our panelists throughout the day. Other things to know is that we are recording the session, so if we say something fascinating but you miss it, you'll have a chance to be able to go back and listen to the recording later. And there will be slides playing in the background at certain points. You should expect a little bit of delay as those slides change. That's normal, and there's nothing wrong with your computer screen if we've moved on to the content of the slide but the visual hasn't quite caught up yet. Hopefully it'll be right on top of things today. All right, let me switch over to the next slide and give you a quick overview of what you can expect for the next 45 minutes to 55 minutes. First, we're going to spend a little bit of time introducing the people that are on the call. And then we'll ask Jim Ludema, who's the director of our program, to talk you through the history of the program and a little bit about it. So you start the day, or you start this meeting with a little bit of information to work with. Then we'll hear from 3 of our current students who've joined us on the call. They'll share a little bit about the program. And then you'll have a chance to send in your questions to our faculty and to our students, and we'll answer those all together. And our plan is to wrap up by 1:55 at the latest so that you guys can be ready for the 2 o'clock meetings and whatever else you have on the schedule for the day. So let's get things started. Let me introduce you to Jim Ludema, who's the director of our program. You see in front of you a picture of our faculty and staff, and Jim is the tall guy in the back. Jim is the co-founder of the Center for Values-Driven Leadership and also its director. He's a professor of leadership and change at Benedictine University, and he's really one of the top globally recognized scholars and thought leaders in appreciative leadership and in people-focused approaches to leadership and organizational culture. He has his PhD from Case Western Reserve University, and when he is not working in the academic spheres, he consults regularly with Fortune 500 and companies and other big organizations that you would recognize by name, and you can read about in his bio on our website. He's also an avid cyclist, and so he spends a lot of time training for a ride this summer he's doing across the Rocky Mountains. So if you get a chance to meet him in person, you can ask him about that. I'm going to turn things over now to Jim to just launch into the meat of our program. Are you there, Jim?
I am, Amber. Thank you. And to all of you on the webinar, thanks so much for joining us today. We are absolutely delighted, as Amber said, that you're interested in our doctoral program, and we're looking forward to sharing as much as we can with you about it and answering any questions that you might have. As Amber mentioned, I'm going to start by introducing our panelists, and they can get into an overview of the Center for Values-Driven Leadership and the doctoral program, and then turn things over to our panelists for their comments. And just as a reminder, as Amber mentioned, feel free to type in any question you might have into the questions box on your desktop. They'll all go to Amber, and then she will bring them into the discussion during the Q&A session. Now on to the panelists. First is Deb Helmuth, and on that slide in front of you, Deb is the woman on the far right, right in front of me. She is the Associate Director of the Center for Values-Driven Leadership, and she works behind the scenes to manage every administrative aspect of our programs. She is also the first point of contact for the center, and as you probably know by now, she is one of the friendliest and most responsive persons on the planet. Second is Amber Johnson, who was already making a few comments. Amber is our corporate relations advisor, and she is in charge of all marketing, communications, brand management, recruiting, and thought leadership dissemination for the center. You've probably had a lot of contact with her already and know that she, too, is one of the friendliest and most responsive persons on the planet. As I mentioned before, she will be moderating the Q&A session a little later. In terms of our student panelists, there are three. The first is Casey Short. Casey is in cohort 2 of the doctoral program and is just beginning her second year of coursework. By day, she is the director of the menu innovation team at McDonald's, where she's responsible for the strategic development of new product opportunities that fill the McDonald's menu pipeline. Things we all love, like beverages, desserts, breakfasts, family categories, chicken offerings, and currently the U.S. burger category. Casey holds a BA in liberal arts from Martin University and an MBA from Benedictine University. Second is Lee Murphy. Lee is in cohort 1 of the doctoral program and is just about to complete his dissertation and graduate on May 10. Congratulations, Lee. Lee is also a social entrepreneur and the founder and CEO of Integrated Case Management L3C, which is a company dedicated to improving the health of patients with multiple chronic health conditions. Lee is a CPA with an MS in organizational behavior and an MBA. Third is Mike Kuppinger. Mike, like Casey, is in cohort 2. He is Executive Vice President and General Manager of Engineering Services at Environmental Systems Design, which is a consulting engineering firm that works on high-profile construction projects around the world, such as One North Wacker in Chicago and the Emirates Palace Hotel in Abu Dhabi. Mike holds a BS in electrical engineering from Iowa State University. You'll be hearing more from those three panelists in just a little while, but first I want to give a brief introduction to the Center for Values-Driven Leadership and a brief introduction to the doctoral program. The Center for Values-Driven Leadership is based on the idea that business is currently the most powerful institution on the planet and the institution with the greatest potential to influence positive social change. And so we started the center to bring together executives, entrepreneurs, business leaders, thought leaders, academics, and others, to bring them together to study and strengthen organizations that want to have a transformative impact on society, and to study and understand and develop leaders who have that passion as well. We've got three programmatic areas that we focus on: education, practice, and research. In the education sphere, we've got our doctoral program that you are now very familiar with. We're working on creating a new state-of-the-art, high-touch, high-tech master's program that we hope to roll out in the next year or so. And then we offer executive education programs for companies in a customized way. From the standpoint of research, we work on a number of different research initiatives in the companies and about the leaders that we are connected with. Currently, we have a 3-year research grant from a group called the Small Giants Community, which is a bunch of business owners and entrepreneurs who are trying to create great organizations that are very people-centered, community-centered, and customer-centered, and having a positive impact on society. It's a 3-year research initiative where we're studying the link between culture and profit. When you create a great values-driven company, does it in fact lead to higher profitability and long-term growth in your companies? And if so, how and why does that happen? We have a number of other research initiatives that we are working on as well, all in the area of values-driven leadership. In terms of the doctoral program itself, there are just 5 things I want to point out. First is that the program is for senior leaders who really want to change the world. If you were to meet the students that we have currently in Cohort 1 and Cohort 2, you'll be blown away by their passion for business and their passion for having a transformative impact and really building a better world through their organizations and through business. And we're looking for people who share that passion, share that conviction, and want to be a part of a dynamic learning community that will help them advance that agenda. The curriculum, point number 2, is a curriculum that is transformative at a number of different levels. It brings together all of the best cutting-edge theory and practice from the fields of psychology, sociology, organizational theory, economic perspectives on responsible leadership, and so on. And students go through 2 years of coursework in which they engage in all kinds of action learning initiatives, studying the latest research, spirited dialogue with faculty and other students and distinguished scholars that we bring into the room, and then writing for publication and presenting at conferences. And the students will talk more about this, but I say it's transformative at multiple levels because it really does help students develop themselves as a leader, develop their organizations to become great organizations, but then also transforms people personally at a very deep level. And as I say, I'll let the students talk more about that going forward. The third point I want to make is that in the doctoral program, we're always trying to push the boundaries of research in the fields of organizational change, leadership, and corporate responsibility and sustainability. We do that partially through our Return on Values research initiative with the Small Giants community, and we do that through all of the other research initiatives in which we are involved. The fourth point is that it's truly a collaborative global learning community. We currently have students that come from different parts of the world and also from all around the country, and we have visiting distinguished scholars who also come from leading universities from around the country and around the globe. And together, the visiting scholars, the core faculty at Benedictine, and the students form a dynamic learning community in which they support each other's research, support each other's learning and development. The fifth point I want to make about the program is that it is uniquely designed and tailored to meet the demands of senior executives who are working full-time. We have classes once a month on weekends, Friday night from 6:30 to 9:30 p.m., and then all day Saturday and all day Sunday. And then once a year we have an 8-day intensive here on the Benedictine University campus where people come together for a full 8 days and really dig deep into topics during that week. So it allows people to work full-time during the week and then travel to class on the weekends and for the 8-day intensive. We also offer 2 different degrees through the program, a PhD or a DBA. And if you want to go in the direction of the PhD, you need to conclude the program with a scholarly dissertation based on original research using quantitative and qualitative research methods. If you want to go the direction of the DBA, which is a doctorate in business administration, you conclude the program by doing an applied dissertation in which you do a change project in your organization or somewhere else, and then write up the dissertation as a case study of that change initiative that you're involved in. So the program is really tailored to meet the demands of full-time working senior executives. I think that's about it for now. That's enough for me. I want to turn it over to the student panelists to share their perspective on the program, and then we'll open things up for questions and answers. Casey, take it away.
Hi, Jim. Thank you, and welcome to all of the panelists, and all of the other participants. Thank you for this opportunity. So I'm Casey Short, And as Jim mentioned, I am the Director of New Product Development at McDonald's here in the U.S. My specific area of focus right now is leading the burger category. So that's making sure that all of the burgers that are on our menu now continue to be great, and then just bringing innovation to our pipeline. So I've done, as Jim mentioned, pretty much every aspect of our product development at McDonald's, and also launched Redbox for the U.S. So always been in marketing and in advertising. And so how did I end up at Benedictine and in this wonderful PhD program? So throughout my life, I've sort of been that kind of person who wanted to know more. So just being good at something or just knowing enough to get by was never enough for me. So I've always had sort of this insatiable appetite to just always want to understand things at a much deeper level. So getting a PhD or going back to school wasn't the big surprise for me, but finding the program at Benedictine was. So I remember looking at programs all across the U.S., and it was the values-driven component of the program that makes it so unique and makes it such just an incredible experience to be a part of. And I'm sure as you guys are looking at programs, you may look at different, even leadership programs. But this one being values-driven is really what made it stand out, and it was the one component that I just wanted to be a part of. So that's what's fascinating. And being a part of a cohort, other industry leaders, other working professionals, and learning everything from, leadership principles back to Socrates and Plato, all the way up to modern-day philosophers and scholars on leadership. It's every single month. There is just so much that we anticipate learning. And as a business leader, you come in thinking you know a lot to begin with, and what you realize is that you haven't even scratched the surface. And that's the part about the program that I love. There's also an international component that's actually it's a mandatory that you speak at an international conference. And most recently, at the end of last year, I was selected along with a couple of other members of my cohort to go to Dubai and speak at a conference, really talking about leadership. And speaking about the things that we're learning in the program. And I think what was so just interesting, and I was in complete awe, because we're sitting here with leader scholars from around the world, and it's me and my colleagues and cohort friends from Benedictine, and we're exchanging ideas with all of these scholars, and we're being respected. We're being respected as practitioners. We're being respected for the contributions that we're making from a corporate perspective. And, I had to pinch myself a couple of times and say, is this really real? And it was. And I know that, being allowed and accepted into this conference and the respect that we all felt being a part of the forum was all due to Benedictine and the PhD in values-driven leadership. So, just being a part of that and working at McDonald's, I have global exposure, but the acceptance that I felt being a part of this scholarly format and representing this program was something that, it's difficult for me to even describe. So, I wake up every day being very thankful of being part of this history that we're making. But just wanted to talk a little bit about that international component, because I don't think I would have ever had that experience had it not been for this program. So I'll also take a pause and turn it over to Mike.
I think it's going to Lee, if I'm not mistaken. Thank you very much, Casey.
It over to Lee.
Well, okay, thank you, Casey, and hello, everyone. I'm going to, a little bit of my journey first, I suppose. I started my PhD journey 22 years ago in a different program, a more traditional program. That journey I never finished. I was, at that point, I'm an entrepreneur. I've always been an entrepreneur. Went back to building a business and had done that, was not interested in or thinking about a PhD program. As an alumni of Benedictine, I got the Benedictine alumni magazine that comes out, and it had the announcement of this program and the write-up about what it was about. And I remember looking at that and going, well, that sounds fascinating. It's too bad that wasn't around when I was interested in being in a PhD program. And then I found myself, I couldn't let go of that thought, and one thing led to another, and as you can tell, I've ended up here. And so not exactly an impulse purchase, but something that I was drawn to because of the uniqueness of what's being offered here. I also I was drawn to the student-centric approach that's here. I'm familiar with Benedictine. I'm familiar with Dr. Ludema and his work with Case Western. And so I'm going to speak a little bit about what I mean by a student-centric approach, because I've had an opportunity to actually be a part of a couple of different doctorate programs, and most doctorate programs are about the doctorate faculty, and it's about the research interests of the doctorate faculty, and it's usually a fairly small group of folks that are pursuing a PhD. Here you're in a cohort. You're with 20 to 25 other people that are doing the same thing, that are also trying to work full-time and live their lives. A student-centric approach is about student development. You know, I would say that personal development in this program is invited, it's not required. If you're somebody who really doesn't want personal development, I'm not sure you would pursue a doctorate. The Benedictine program offers exposure to leadership, sustainability in the organizational literature. It increased my understanding of existing theory, but more importantly, it taught me how to develop my own theory and how to think about things differently. This program is an accelerated program. They're asking us to do in 3 years what other programs would give you 4, 5, 6 or more years to do. What's nice here is that the assignments eventually leverage together, and it gives you an opportunity to build towards your dissertation and towards being finished in 3 years. It's about the pragmatic development of an executive scholar. It's not about the theoretical development of an academician. We do develop our chops, if you will, on building theory, but it's pragmatic. It's about how can we be learning things that can make a difference in the world, and how can we take that, integrate it into who we are, and then carry that as we walk in the world. I found many times that I would come out of weekend classes or finish papers and be reflecting back on my organization and have some direct applicability from the work that we did in the classroom to what was going on in my organization. One quick example is we did a course on appreciative inquiry, and about 6 months later, our organization actually used that approach as part of a successful 2-day launch of a major change initiative. So different than other programs, I find that here, if you were to ask Jim or any other faculty, why are certain things assigned, why do we do big projects that they call qualitative project 1 or qualifying project 2, you know, they can explain how that builds our exposure to the field, to the literature in the field, lets us touch different kinds of literature in the field, from those that are more practitioner focused to those that are very highly academically focused. It respects what it means to be an executive scholar, and it supports us along the way. I'm going to turn it over to Mike.
Hello, everyone. I want to also start out by thanking Jim and Amber and Deb, and actually make a comment to you who are considering this program. If I was in that spot about maybe 18 months ago, and discerning, and Deb was able to connect me with someone from cohort 1 that did a good job of explaining, because I had similar concerns that maybe any of you may have of, do I have the time, can I make the commitment? And so in an effort of paying it forward, you know, hopefully if you're interested, you can go through Deb and connect with one of us in cohort 1 or 2, and I'm sure we'd all be happy to, you know, tell you how we were able to make the time and put the focus in it. So shifting a little bit over to a little bit more on my role and why this program is so important for me. I'm a practitioner, a general manager of about 300 engineers. One of my main roles is to hire the team leaders who lead both internal other engineers as well as clients. And really, as I would try to train these leaders to become better leaders, I really realized I needed to raise the bar for myself. And I found this program to be a great fit. Covered a wide variety of things from sustainability that we're going into to theory and others, as Casey and Lee had said. So a comment on the course. I think the course is designed very, very well, where we're meeting once a month, and then there's papers and readings in between. But I'll also pass on one of the things that Dave Smith from Cohort 1 told me, is that you really need to get a commitment of the people that extend from you. So it's very important that my partners at my engineering firm, my family, a few committees that I was involved in the community, they knew I was in this program, and we've been able to work it out to make that commitment. To me, the impact was immediate. There's so many things that I was able to come home and talk with my wife about and implement, even with our family. Even more things I could implement with our partners at work, literally from the very first week we started. I want to also tag on to one of the things that Casey said from an international perspective. I wasn't able to go to the Abu Dhabi trip. We actually have an office over in Abu Dhabi, but upcoming is a trip to Ireland, and so I'll be on that trip and presenting at the Ireland Academy for Management, and very excited about that as well. And so maybe wrapping up, probably one of the things that I think best about the program is the people. Some of the folks that I've met with and got to know in Cohort 2, I'm sure will become, they'll stay lifelong friends and connections in the community. The team that Jim has put together is amazing, and the connections that they have out in the business and in the academic world is fantastic, which then is how they're able to get such fantastic visiting professors come in, some of the top writers and people who really set the stage for the future of leadership. So with that, I'll turn it back to Jim, you, and Amber.
All right. Well, thank you, Mike and Lee and Casey. And we're going to move into the section now where we get to answer some questions. And there's a list of questions that are coming in, but we want to make sure we get the questions from the attendees out to the whole group. So here's how you do that, just as a reminder. There in your GoToWebinar software, there's a questions box. And you can type your question to that. That question comes to me only. I'm the only one who sees it, and then I'm going to DJ, as we call it, the questions out to the panelists. And so now's the time to start typing those questions out and sending them. And I'll be moderating those, so please start that now. But we've got a couple to get started with, so let's start talking. Lee, you gave a great example of the applicability of what you've learned in the program to your workplace, and your example was that you learned some appreciative inquiry approaches to change management and to thinking about strategy for your organization. And Mike, you hinted that that has happened for you as well, that there have been some things you've taken back to the class. And I wondered if you could maybe give us a specific example of something you found really just applicable to your daily life at work. And then after you've had a chance, I'll go to Casey and ask her to share an example too.
So I'll jump in here. I think the appreciative inquiry is probably one of the things that impacted me most. Very often when you go to solve a problem, you focus on literally solving the problem. And I think this is probably true in all organizations, but especially in a design community, you really need to think collaboratively, and you need to think and get the creative juices flowing, if you will. And so bringing some of the appreciative inquiry back, and I ask some of our staff, what were some of the things that really worked well on past projects? What were some of the best moments that you thought of? Or when we interview clients, using some of their appreciative inquiry discussions, it helps them think beyond what the problems are, and we're solving the problems, but we're solving it from a much bigger, creative, positive standpoint, and really raising the bar and really overachieving just solving the problem, but creating a whole new framework to look at, what success means.
Great, thank you. I like that idea of a new framework for looking at what success means. Casey, do you have an example you'd be able to share with us?
I do, and while I have several professional, I can't help but to just talk about, even from a personal perspective, how the program and how appreciative inquiry, since that's what we're speaking of right now, has affected me just as a mother, because I'm a mom of 12-year-old twins, and you know, when your kids come home from school and you ask them how their day went, Dr. Ronald Fry, who is a leading professor in this very special way of managing, gave us an example of how he speaks to his kids, even about something as simple as, how was your day? And ever since that class, I've reframed even that very simplistic question to, tell me what was great about your day today. And I have to tell you, I did that almost like a little experiment of two, and what I get back from them is completely different from what I would have gotten had I just asked the question the way I did before taking that course. And then even during review processes, we're in that process now here, or that time of year, when I sit down and speak to people and members of my team, it's not so much about, you know, what could we do better from last year, or, you know, what are some opportunities, but more so they talk about what they're most proud of, and then we really lean heavily into what they're most proud of, so that we can almost exacerbate that and make it that much bigger as a part of their goals for this year. So it was a fascinating course, and I'm sure we can go on for several more minutes, but I'll pause and turn it over to Amber and Lee.
Great. Well, let me put another question out there. Jim, we have someone asking a question about dissertations. I think people are already thinking ahead to what the dissertation process is like, and also the kind of things that our students are interested in studying. Would you talk a little bit about some of the dissertation topics Cohort 1 is moving towards right now, and how that process works?
Yeah, in terms of the dissertation topics, a lot of students select a topic that is focused on their own organization or the development of leaders in their own organization. Others choose to focus on topics that are outside their own organization, which is fine as well. But just one, for example, is what Lee Murphy, who is on the call, is doing. He mentioned that they launched a major change initiative a couple of years ago using appreciative inquiry. Throughout that process, Lee has tracked data on mental and physical health of employees, employee engagement, organizational excellence, and positive practices, using the Positive Practices Survey from Kim Cameron at the University of Michigan, and then also performance measures in terms of you know, bringing in new patients, the time it takes to see new patients and move them from phase 1 to phase 2 to phase 3 in the program, you know, revenue and profitability measures and so on. And you know, Lee is looking at and what he's found is that in this change process over the course of the last year, or in the first year of the change initiative, those scores by and large went up. Not all of them, but many of them went up, whereas typically in a major organizational change process, those numbers will go down. And so then Lee is gathered a bunch of qualitative data through interviews and meetings with employees, and is also you know, doing quantitative analysis on the measures that he used to explain why it is in a process that uses a positive approach like that, it improves organizational health and organizational performance, even in the midst of a major transformational change, as opposed to you know, those numbers going down. So that's one example. A great study, very well done. Another guy, Lee DeReamer, also named Lee, in Cohort 1, did something completely different. He was a career military guy and transitioning out of the military, going into private practice, and he was very interested in the midlife transition and what is that like and how do you do that well, so that he can work with people who are making that kind of transition to help them find purpose, find meaning, find the right opportunities for them to develop, to grow through that process, rather than it being, a downturn in their life's journey. And so he went out and he interviewed a whole bunch of people who had been through midlife introspective periods and, come out the other side in a real positive way, and began to develop a model for, midlife transition, positive midlife transition. So a very interesting one. A third one, Carolyn Murray is in cohort 1. She's studying peace builders in China and the United States. She did in-depth interviews with 4 leading peace builders in China and 4 leading peace builders in the United States, and is comparing and contrasting their approaches to peace building. So there are just a wide variety of different topics that people do their dissertation on, and as you can see, in some cases very focused on their organization, and in others, focused in the new direction that they want to go, or focused in the area of a topic they're just interested in. In terms of how the process works, the entire curriculum is designed to help you accomplish the dissertation. So you do 2 years of coursework, and in the first year you get courses on a wide range of topics around leadership, organizational change, and corporate responsibility and sustainability. Then in the second year you get some more content courses, but move into research methods courses. And those research methods courses help you begin to write up the methodology you want to use to do your dissertation. Also during those first 2 years, there are 2 qualifying papers that are written, as Lee Murphy mentioned. The first one is what we call Qual 1, where you do a broad review of all of the leading journals in the fields of leadership, sustainability, and organizational change to find out what people are writing about, what are hot topics, and to get connected with the literature. Then in the second year, you write Qual 2, which is a deep dive into a topic that's of interest to you. So, when Lee Murphy was doing his deep dive, Qual 2, he was very interested in social entrepreneurship. He was very interested in appreciative inquiry and positive change. And so he did his deep dive into those areas. That then serves as the basis of your literature review for your dissertation. And then, as I say, you move into the research methods courses that allow you to craft your methods section of the dissertation. And then in the third year, you actually go out and collect your data or do your change project, and then write up the results from the collection of that data or that change project. And so the entire curriculum helps you move towards the completion of the dissertation.
Great.
Jimmy,
Thank
if I could make just a quick comment on that. When I started the program, I was really worried I was going to come up with a really good idea for dissertation. And but over the last year, I feel like I've come up with so many ideas. Now the process is narrowing it down, and sitting through cohort 1's dissertations have really helped narrow it in. So it's not, as a personal case, not a problem of coming up with ideas. It's almost you get passionate about too many things, and you have to narrow it down to one as the process goes on.
Great.
Absolutely. And, we have regular sessions throughout the program where we sit down with students and talk about their specific topics and what they're interested in. And if they have, 3 or 4 different topics, we try to talk through the merits of the different topics and help them frame up a way to focus it. We just had a session like that with cohort 2 a couple of weeks ago, and we'll continue to have more sessions like that over the course of the next 6 months as they get closer to completing their qualifying 2 paper and getting into the research methods courses, so that by the time they get there in September, they're locked on with a topic, locked on with a direction, and can get moving on the dissertation.
And your whole team is committed to helping us get to that point.
Absolutely.
So not surprisingly, we're getting some questions about workload and how this really works in the life of an executive who's busy already and who may have family or life commitments outside of the workplace as well. I wonder, Casey, could you just say something about what the program is requiring for you, how you're finding the ability to balance these things?
Well, for me personally, I think Mike alluded to this earlier, but it was a matter of me making sure that everyone around me was committed to the program as well. And by that I mean, you know, I sat down and had conversations with my husband. I sat down and had conversations with my kids, with, you know, my dad or other people that I knew that I may lean on a little bit more than what I normally would, and just making sure that I had their support, because I knew if I was going to get into the program, if I would be accepted, I was going to be all in. So that was the first thing that I did, and once I realized I had everyone's support, that kind of alleviated a lot of the anxiety. But, you know, it just becomes a part of your everyday. So I don't necessarily separate, you know, my PhD studies from, you know, what I do here on a regular basis at McDonald's. So I have my day-to-day work and those tasks, of course, but during lunch hours I'm reading, or after work I'm reading. There's a lot of our assignments that Jim and the team have found a way to integrate into your day-to-day work. So, for example, there may be an assignment where you need to interview or you need to speak to colleagues or that sort of thing. So I try to also involve those around me here professionally in my journey, because they too, you know, I'm leaning on them a little bit more than what I normally do. For the weekends, I still find time to sit down and have dinner with the family, but, you know, I have to be very transparent with everyone on the phone. You know, after dinner I am probably reading, but it also forces my family to be a part of that. So if I'm in the bed studying, my family or my kids are in the bed studying with me. So I just try to integrate it as naturally as possible into my day-to-day. I've also been asked a couple of times, well, you know, how many hours? What should I think of? And so I'm maybe between 10 and 20. It really just depends on what the specific assignments are, or what the readings entail. But I just think
Is that a week, Casey?
A week. Yeah, a week. Thank you, Amber. That's a week. But, you know, and as I said, the more I integrate it with just who I am and just the way my lifestyle is right now, it almost becomes very fluid. So I don't feel as if I have, you know, this hour set aside for this assignment. It just becomes a part of my day-to-day activities. So for me, it's been a welcome. Because I'm getting smarter as I'm doing all of this. So I find it as a challenge, but it's a welcome challenge, and it's one that just keeps me going. It just keeps me motivated, especially now that I'm in year 2. So that's just, you know, my personal perspective.
Great. And so tagging on to that, Jim, a real practical question. Someone wants to know, say you have a work travel that's going to keep you out of class. How is that handled? How do you make up missed time, or what does that look like?
One of the things that we really emphasize before a person takes the step to join this program is that we expect students to be in class for the full time with every class. That is to say, every weekend from start to finish, and during the 8-day intensive, start to finish. And we ask students to make that commitment up front. And the reason we do that, of course, is that, you know, we're bringing in visiting scholars from around the world to do much of the teaching. Other students are flying in from Germany, California, Canada, etc., to be in there during those class periods. And that time is very precious. And so we expect everybody to be there for the full class time. Occasionally, things come up that simply can't be avoided. A death in the family, you know, a very special, you know, graduation of a son or a daughter from college, or something like that. And in those cases, if a student absolutely feels they have to miss class, then yes, we ask them to you know, write an additional paper or do an additional assignment to make up for the time they missed. And the purpose for that, obviously, is if you're not in the classroom as part of the discussion and dialogue and debate and so on the topic, then you're not really learning it unless you do some other assignment to make that up. So in short, Amber, the answer is we ask students to commit to not missing class during the program, and if due to extreme circumstances they have to, we ask them to do some kind of make-up assignment for the time they missed.
Amber, can I add to that?
Sure.
So really quickly, in our cohort 2, we had one of our members actually have back surgery. And if anyone's gone through any level of surgery, I mean, back surgery is pretty uncomfortable. And we literally Skyped him into the weekend course because he refused to miss it. And it's what Jim is saying is absolutely true, but from a student's perspective, you don't want to miss the classes. And you know, we had our class all sort of hold the microphone and hold the computers, and he's singing and he's actively engaged in the conversation. But I just mentioned that because, you know, he went to an extreme to be a part of the dialogue and to be a part of the class. And, you know, you hear all of the time where we're sort of ebbing and flowing and making adjustments to our schedules. Our international convention is this weekend, and I'm going to miss it because I want to be in the classroom because I know that there's something there that I'm going to need. So I just wanted to give that as an example of the commitment of the students, and that's like a real-life example.
Casey, I want to take on, I completely agree, and one of the things that I think helped is there was a schedule put out, you know, for the first 2 years, so you know what, you know, Friday, Saturday, Sundays you're going to be meeting. And there's been a number of times where, you know, clients will say, hey, I'd like to meet on Friday or whatever, and I say, well, I've got class, can we move it to the following Monday? And that's actually led in some great discussions because several of my clients ask, wow, this is pretty amazing that you're putting this level of, you know, of education into helping your staff, but also helping me. And so it's actually led to some good discussions, and I've not had a single client or partner mind when I said this is a priority and I need to be in class.
Great. And Mike, if I can get the name of those clients and their contact info, I'd like to recruit them for the program. So Jim, we're getting some questions about the DBA, PhD, and really trying to understand the difference of those two degrees, both in how it operates in the program and then how it's useful in the marketplace. Could you comment on that?
Yeah, in terms of how it works in the program, for the first 2 years, the students take the exact same classes. So there's no difference between a student in the DBA track or the PhD track for the 2 years of coursework. The difference comes in the 3rd year when you do the dissertation. As I mentioned earlier, in the PhD track, you do a scholarly dissertation based on original research using traditional research methods. In the DBA track, you do an applied dissertation, which is essentially doing a change project in your organization and then writing up the dissertation as a case study, an in-depth case study of that change initiative. So let me just use the example of Lee Murphy and the change project he did in his organization, looking at individual and organizational health in a time of major transformational change. Because he collected all of that data in terms of mental health, physical health, organizational excellence, employee engagement, positive practices, and you know, business outcomes, and used traditional quantitative research methods to analyze the relationships between all of those variables. And because he collected qualitative interview data from employees throughout the process to get their perspective and understanding, he used traditional quantitative and qualitative research methods to do original research in the context of his organization and is in the PhD track. He could have done the very same change initiative and not measured or analyzed all of that statistical data and not collected the same amount of depth in terms of interviews from all of his employees and just done the initiative and then written up sort of lessons learned from doing the initiative, and then he would have gone in the DBA direction. So that's just an example of the difference between the two. There was a second part to that question, Amber. Can you remind me what that is? Oh, what is the difference between a PhD degree and a DBA degree once you're sort of back out in the marketplace, so to speak? And, you know, I think that both of them are terminal doctoral degrees. And so in that sense, there's, quote, no difference between the two. If you do want to go in an academic direction, or think you may want to go into an academic direction, either teaching full-time or teaching part-time in a university, the PhD is certainly a more respected degree in academic circles. Whether it should be is another question, but in fact it is. And so if that is a path you want to consider, then the PhD is definitely a better way to go. If your desire is to, you know, be a consultant, start an independent consulting firm or work with a consulting company, I think both the PhD and the DBA would be valued there. If your desire is to remain in business and you know, continue to work as an executive in business, I think either one of the degrees is, you know, equally valuable and equally respected in those contexts. So that would be my answer to that.
Terrific, Jim. And one quick question, just so you know, we have about 3 minutes. We're going to try to cover a couple of questions pretty quickly here. But along with that idea of the dissertation, can you come into the program with a dissertation topic in mind?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And many people do. And in some cases, they stick with it the whole way through, and in some cases, they change midway through. But yes, indeed, you can come in with a dissertation topic in mind.
Terrific. A one-word answer. Absolutely. I like it. We have just time for a couple of closing questions. So there's a few things we haven't had a chance to cover yet. I wonder, Lee, could you say something about what it's like to be in a cohort model program and what it's like to interact with your fellow students?
If it was not a cohort model, I would not have joined. It gives me an opportunity to take the responsibility to be a part of a community. I don't say those words lightly. It is one of my intentions when I walked into the program. You can either sit as a collection of individuals, 20, 25 of you each kind of coexisting, or you can try to figure out how to tap into synergy, develop relationships so you can really support each other. It's a choice each and every person makes, but it's a great opportunity, and the program supports you doing it. I wouldn't have done it any other way.
Terrific. We have 2 minutes left, so I'm going to give each of you 30 seconds to answer this question. What do you wish you'd known before you started the program? So we'll start with Mike, go to Casey, and then to Lee.
How fun it was going to be. It was going to be a lot of work, but it's actually fun. I look forward to, you know, the readings. I'm a slow reader, but I look forward to it, and it's a lot of fun.
Great. Casey?
I wish I would have known how much the program would change me personally as much as it has professionally. And had I known that, I may have tried to become a member of Cohort 1. I would have gotten in even sooner. But the impact personally is probably it's as great as all of the changes that I'm making in my professional life.
Terrific. And Lee?
To take Jim seriously when he says don't lift your foot up off the gas as you finish your coursework and you move into the dissertation phase. If you just stayed with it, my last 12 weeks wouldn't be as crazy as they would have been.
That's right. 2 years of coursework, and then the third year is your dissertation, and even though you're not on campus in classes regularly, you're saying don't take your foot off the pedal.
Exactly.
Terrific. Well, thank you guys for taking time to answer those questions. As we begin to close up today, I just want to offer a few reminders on what comes next for the program. So if being on this call today has piqued your interest and you think you are considering applying, we encourage you to do so sooner rather than later. We expect a pretty solid rush of applications to begin in the next few weeks. We do accept applications until November 1st, but we'll certainly consider them as they come in and would love to see yours earlier, and that gives us time then to review and do interviews earlier rather than later as well. So we'll do application reviews and interviews throughout the fall over the winter. And someone has asked me, is it possible, and this is a question we didn't get to discuss the topics that interest you from a dissertation perspective with Dr. Ludema or some of the other faculty members. We can certainly help answer some of those questions throughout the application process, but you'll have an interview which can be face-to-face or Skype depending on where you live, and at that time you really will have a chance to go through and get those questions answered and debate the dissertation ideas. And as Jim said, sometimes people stick with them and sometimes they don't, but at least you know that it fits within the context of our program, and that would be part of that interview process. Once we've completed all of that, we'll make notifications of the people that are accepted into the program in January, and we anticipate accepting about 27 applicants, or we'll probably have twice that many applications. So again, it's good to get your application in earlier rather than later, and classes will start in April of 2015. We know that we probably haven't covered every question you might have, and there's a lot of things on your mind. So we invite you to contact our staff at any point. Deb and I are here to sort of help get your questions to the right people and get you the right sets of information. And so please do reach out to us. You should have our email in your accounts. But there's also a couple of resources you can use for your own exploration of the program. And so I just want to make sure you're familiar with our website, which is cvdl.org. Here's a quick screenshot of it. And if you just type in cvdl.org/doctorate, it'll take you straight to all of our information about the PhD program that falls under that education tab you see there circled in orange. And on that page, you'll have the opportunity to download a program booklet. And if you haven't done that already, I encourage you to do it. It's great to have on your iPad or your tablet. It's a PDF. It's about 30 pages long, and it gives you bios of all of our students and all of our faculty. It goes through the program in more detail. It shares a sample schedule. It has a lot of frequently asked questions. It's just a great comprehensive resource you can use. And then you also see on our website we've circled the video tab, and on that video tab there are some PhD videos where you can hear from students in their own words and from Jim in his words a little more about the program. That's something you can revisit. And eventually we'll post the audio of this session as well on that under that tab, so you can come back and revisit it. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Jim to just make some closing remarks.
Just first of all, someone asked if they could send dissertation topics, and that is fine. I would ask that you make Deb Helmuth or Amber Johnson your first point of contact, because a lot of times what we find is Deb and Amber can answer 95% of the questions that come in. If they then, feel like it needs to come on to me or one of the other faculty members, they'll send it on to us. But we're happy to engage you around any potential dissertation topics or other questions that you might have. With that said, I just want to thank everybody very much for being on the webinar today. Thank you, all of the participants. Thanks for your interest in the program. We look forward to hearing from you and remaining in conversation with you about the program. Thank you to the panelists. Casey, Lee, and Mike, really appreciate that you took the time to come on. And Amber and Deb, thank you very much for organizing this and making it happen. It has been a delight.
And with that, we'll conclude our session. Thank you so much, everybody. We'll be in touch, and have a good day.